So I finished some Ars Magna recently and it's kind of ass more often than not, but there's bits here and there where I was enjoying what I was trying to do. I had a heads up this time around, but I forgot who it was. The gist was that I should have tried any other localized title from them instead, but the issue is that I'm not a fan of tentacles, so that was basically a pass for all of them from what I can tell, so I had to settle for this one, and hey, maybe I liked it a little bit more than I would have just because of low expectations. Funny enough, the worst part is the first few hours because they were dreadfully boring, so that was a clear sign for people to drop it, but I'm a dumbass that rarely drops anything, so if you can get past the first couple hours or the initial hump, then you might be fine, unless you also finish the chaos route because that section had no love and it's like 90% backtracking, and I'll get to that in the spoilers. The general gist of the plot is you're a rando in a land that's getting screwed over by this dust crap that's basically making the land uninhabitable at a bit at a time. Some people are trained to become alchemists, and while they can choose their own factions and their own studies, the basis is to figure out a way for humanity to keep on going. So the cast are basically just students alongside some mentors going through their own adventure to resolve the ongoing crisis. The main thing is I just don't like the main character. There's nothing really interesting about him, and it wouldn't be that hard to make it work. There's a decent amount of characters going around, and you should at least find one or two that you like. The main three are Arya, Celis, and Henry, I believe it's what they're called. So the childhood friend, the princess, and I guess the best way to explain it is like, oh, it's a comrade slash companion slash partner thing. It kind of sucked that I was more interested in the side characters, but maybe I'd feel the opposite if roles were swapped. As an example, I like Sasha, who's basically Celis' knight slash bodyguard, but maybe I'd be bored if she was the main character instead of Celis. I did like Arya though. Her and Celie have like pretty popular VAs. Outside of those, I was a fan of Friend, Johan, and I believe his name was Albert. Sonia had her moments, who was like the teacher, but I feel like they could have done a lot better with her, or a lot more with her. But really, none of them are really all that developed anyway. They all got their archetype that they fill in, and that's it. The crafting is bare bones, and honestly would have been better just to put it in the trash and just make like little side quests that unlocks the new tiers of weapons. There's these crests that you get by chance when killing enemies, then you apply them to your unit for some extra buffs. Most of them are kind of useless and can be ignored outside of maybe playing this in like the hardest difficulties. Or maybe the extra damage based on the nature of property of the enemy actually counts, but otherwise you can just ignore it. The annoying ones were mostly the boss specific ones where they may drop but probably not, and some of these are like 20k HP bosses. One I gave up on and just cheated on the boss and just put the HP to 0 because fuck it. I tried it 3 times, like I'm not doing this anymore. And that's with like these crests that's like mimics that increase your fortune, which is like increase the drop rate. And even then it took like the 3 or 4 times, like what the fuck. By the end, the only character I had built up was Celis, who was basically the designated tank. The others just have a mishmash of stuff, and honestly just stacking some MP regen on all of them just is enough to carry through the normal mode, outside of like a few fights where honestly everything was poorly designed. And the reason behind that is like these 2 to 4 bosses can one-shot you, and it was kind of funny at first until you notice that the next stage is back to being stupidly easy and you just auto do the whole boss fight again. The battle system itself is kind of ass because it's like a dungeon crawler type battle system, but you can see every node, so there's no real need to plan out how to move around. Basically, it's no Bunny Black or even Moro Chronicles or whatever it's called in terms of like combat and traversal. It's not awful, but it's more like this could have been like a 10-hour plot VN and you could just give up on the gameplay at all, and I would give it like a higher rating. Like, I'm not even sure how long it actually is because of how many times I just left it open while I was doing other things. This could have been like a 20-hour VN or 25-hour VN that expanded to like 50 in my gameplay timer crap. And even then I skipped the post game because from what I can tell, there's no longer any more story content. There's just challenging fights and a shit ton more crests to collect. And it's like, yeah, if you're into the collectathon stuff, which I kind of was when I was a kid, but now I'm like, yeah, I don't have time for that. I got like 500 other things in my backlog to go through and I have other shit to do. It's like, fuck, I'm not doing it. But I'm not, you know, taking away points for it. It's like, yeah, it's something for some people, it's just not for me. There's this adventure mode that you can lock after beating either route, and that basically just skips the fights and the traversing the map, which is a nice feature to have. Unfortunately, I don't think it gives you an option to switch it off halfway through, nor does it let you play any maps that you didn't play yet. So technically, I didn't beat the final boss in the law route. It wouldn't even let me since I finished the chaos route first, and it's like, oh, that kind of sucks. Part of me was irked on it, but also didn't want to play through it anymore anyway, but I just like the option. Or maybe instead of the adventure mode, it'd be like a one-shot so you can at least see the new monsters. At least it's something, right? The CG spread is kind of funny too, but it's from Ninetale, so it's not like I expected it's something else. There's like 98 CG and 53 of them are H scenes. 10 are from the Chaos Route, and I think Law has the other 15, and the rest is from the Common Route. And that sounds like the remaining CG is a relatively healthy amount of just like plot, but 30 of them are of the remaining 45 are just action stills. Like, wow, that's lazy. Also, some of those HDs take forever to finish, and it's kind of weird that the Chaos Route has just less of them. And while I'll be talking about the Chaos Route and the spoilers, the main point is that I don't know what they're going for. It's more cringy evil instead of something well thought out. The sad thing is the components needed for it to work actually exist, they're just in the Common Route and the Law section. An easy comparison is like, okay, Chaos Route is like Jared Leto's Joker instead of choosing any other Jokers you can use, and it's not like you even got a unique plot point in there, it's just all revealed in Law. What the fuck's the point of this? It's kind of stupid. There's a lot of ways you can backstab into some weird, not even Game of Thrones, but any kind of freaking plot you can go with it. It's like, nah, we're just cringy evil, he's just really horny all the time and he wants to control the world and fuck it, I don't care. It's like, oh great. Overall, there's a couple interesting scenes where they covered the different college factions, especially the one which I think was like called the Grayman College, and their whole concept was trying to evolve humanity to the point that it can live with the dust instead of trying to find a miracle to clear it all out. The whole last chapter or so was pretty decent, especially the latter half. It actually has a lot of similarities to a different title I really enjoyed, but it's basically spoiling that title or this title depending how it is, so I was like, I'm just gonna skip it. The difference was the characters were a lot more charming in that one, while this one was a lot more horny, which, you know, it's Ninetales, so it's, yeah, you kind of have to expect it. It could have been like a mid-7 if they streamlined some of the plot, reduced some of the gameplay backtracking, and kept it around like 20 hours. Hell, all the H-Chains could have stuck around for the fan base, but I'd appreciate those being shorter too. I remember Dawn had a shit ton of those H-Chains, but they worked well because the timing and the pacing between them made it look like a gameplay loop, and it's like, oh, it works fine. Basically what I'm saying is like the pacing was great. This one is not. And that's kind of the general theme. Slight changes here and there would have kind of made it a decent experience. It would have been an 8 or anything, but it could have been a mid-7. My general outlook is something around a 4 for the beginning and alongside the Chaos Route, and then like a 5, I guess, for the most areas, except for a few interesting ones where I put it at like a 6 or 7. And the last chapter where I put it like a 7, that could have been an 8 if the main character was fully voiced. Overall, I'm giving it a 5, and it could have been a 7 with some changes. So this is spoilers now. For the most part, it just goes through some of the issues I had with the Chaos Route and how it could have handled a few other things differently, I guess. But basically, I have to go through a few story beats for it to even work. So Shin, the main character, has this Philosopher's Stones embedded into him after an event where he was fighting like a dozen Ash Demon Wolves or whatever. The Ash Demons are kind of just random crap that took too much dust and converted into like these Ash Demons. Even trees and plants can turn into them, right? It's not guaranteed, but the amount of shit you fight, I would actually question. It's like, no, I think everything just turns into this. When they mutate, they call it the phase that's like, oh, they're eclipsing. Anyways, so Shin's in this college, which is basically just a faction of how they think, and these guys want to harmonize with nature and with the gods, and the gods are just beings that have functions, but there's primordial gods, which basically control like water and fire and wind, earth, and then there's one for sun, and then there's a sixth one which is like, oh, moon and knowledge. They're also just called the Origin, so I'm just going to call them that, it's easier. Anyways, the Philosopher's Stone can convert dust into extra power that also kind of fucks him up. It's essentially corrupting him little by little. These normal gods are eclipsing, and Shin's faction wants to revert them back to normal. It's a whole process that takes it like half the common plot, or maybe 3/4 of it. And during that time, the cast is going through each origin. They generally have a goal or some circumstance that happens to meet them, but you generally have to help them fend off this other group called the Destroyers that just want to fuck up the world even faster. So fast forward a bit, going through the first 4 origins, and I believe the fire one at least twice, but I think it was 3 times. Anyways, they kind of figure out how to cure the eclipse now, or the eclipsing, but it needs the Philosopher's Stone alongside making contracts with each origin. So if you're trying to cure like a fire-based god, then you have to go make a contract with the fire origin. It's like, all right, I think her name's Marduk. The way to make a contract is by banging them, because that's how these fucking things work. And I forgot to mention that Shin's body is getting corrupted a little here and there, and that gets alleviated by him banging the 3 main characters and sometimes some of the other side characters. It's important for the Chaos Route, but still kind of dumb because the concept is that he has to do it with someone else to like, otherwise the corruption doesn't spew out or some shit. But it's not like he has to come in them and be super easy fix for like, oh, they don't get corrupted if you just do it outside. But even ignoring that, the more obvious one is like, just collect a random like 50 other people and just keep on doing them. So it's like, you know, for this thing, like, like everybody's gonna die anyway with this dust crap, so might as well have some sacrifices. So it seems like he's a more of a safe bet, and you can use it. You know, Bunny Black kind of does that, but in a different way. I'm not spoiling that. It's actually done a lot better than this one, honestly, but whatever. Anyway, so now they're going back to all the origins again to get all these contracts, and the team is generally getting tested by them. Fast forward to the Chaos route, you're now going back to the origins again, but this time to corrupt them. So like, wow. At the minimum, you're going to the same place at least 3 times, and I think the volcano like 5 to 6 times. This is some Skyward Sword level shit of tracking, right? Holy crap. And after all the backtracking, the route is basically over in like 2 more missions, and you'd assume they'd be bring back like the Greymane faction that were basically trying to do what Shin accomplished, but nope, they're not there. They could have put them in there for Shin just to use them as pawns, but they're just forgotten, and that's kind of sad. And that's kind of a thing with the side characters as well. Shin sublimates some of them, but just nukes his dad. He could have been used to develop Faust's scene, which comes in like, I think the next scene, but I was like, nah, fuck it, I don't care. He's a dude, he has to die. And honestly, I wouldn't mind most of this if all these things weren't covered in the other route, but it does. So I was like, why is this even here? Why the hell did you make the Greymane part exclusive to Law? Why is anything covered in the Chaos route better explained in Law? You even get less H scenes, what the fuck? What's the point of this? So ranting aside, the Law route was actually pretty fine. You don't have the backtracking, and it covers anything you might have wondered throughout the plot. You made the Greymane faction again, and they basically transformed. The cast refuses it, but actually incorporates Greymane's data into their own formulas and how to progress their own shit. It's like, okay, cool. You're actually using things from the Karma route to make it work. Awesome. The dust is really phantom particles where it's basically just radiation. Everybody's fucking nuked. So all this corrosion disease and mutating animals actually makes sense at this point. The last origin was called the Start, and you knew this in the common route, but it's actually basically turning a valve on and off to like have a test environment to evolve humanity. Basically a nuclear warhead blew up the valve, so Astarte has to cover the hole with its own body. These apostles that humanity thought saved them were actually the ones that fucked everything up because they're making all the technology. Space just making a nuclear reactor and it blew up basically, right? And this would have been a great place to add like the Chaos / Law route split. Like, okay, this is where things happen. Like, okay, Shin gets pissed off and becomes evil, or it's like, oh no, we can still do the right thing, crap like that. And things would make more sense than what the fuck Chaos route did, right? Because all he is fucking doing is being cringy and just learning that like 20 minutes before the ending. It's like, oh, now I know this. I was right all along. And now he's like, I'm gonna fuck more things and I'm gonna blow everything up. And it's like, okay, you blew everything up. What are you gonna do now? Well, I'm gonna create this thing, but I don't know what I'm doing. And then one other character's like, well, you know, you can do it, and if it sucks, you could just blow it up again. And it's like, fuck yeah, blow it up again. It's like, oh my god, this is awful. There's a lot of cool shit happening in the end, but it's like akin to a movie where, you know, the 50 minutes or the 90 minutes just being very generic, very boring, and then the last 20 minutes like, holy shit, this is awesome. On the other hand, the epilogues are actually kind of boring. I guess I like the enemies the best, and that's kind of funny considering she was nowhere near my favorite character. So yeah, overall, I actually liked the ending. The last 2 to 3 hours actually were fun. I liked it a lot. Did it warrant, you know, the fucking 40 hours of playing through this? No. I should have just listened, but I'm a dumbass. But still, it was fun. I had a lot of other VNs where I'm just mad the whole time. This one's like, alright, it kind of redeemed himself in the end. I'm still giving it a 5 because, you know, fucking beginning and the middle halves were just very generic.